Welcome to the world of Harry Smilak.
Harry Smilak, personal management, at your service.
A world of fancy cars and fabulous women.
Have you ever considered a career in modeling?
He's got everything money can buy. The trouble is, it's not his money.
Oh! Mr. Kim from the Full Frank Savings and Loan, the Vice President. Corrections.
Corrections?
I correct money from deadbeats like you.
He's a mover.
Yeah. Hey, I'm smoking it here.
And a shaker.
I've been thinking about our relationship.
What relationship?
A wheeler.
I'm Harry Smilak. Ow!
And a dealer.
So, tell me, does my man have a T-shirt or a shoe deal?
He's a legend.
Whatever it is, the answer is absolutely none.
What do you want from me?
$67,811.19 to be very specific.
Then, one day, he took some punks
What do you think is the number one thing on M. Harry Smilak's mind?
M. Harry Smilak.
added some hunks,
You're a dead man, Smilak!
and created rock and roll wrestling.
You don't have to thank me. It's just another Smilak service.
A comedy with muscle. Body slam.
Oh, hey, guys. Trust me.
Welcome, everybody, to this latest edition of Unfinished Business Deep Dive. And I am your host, Andre Joseph of AG Epics Productions, and I am all out of bubblegum. And with me, as always, is my co-host and the man himself, Mr. Jeff Gallishaw.
Oh, yeah.
And welcoming back one of our special guests from last year. You probably remember him from our Armed and Dangerous episode, our good friend, Mark Chiappetta. Say hello.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? You know what? I even wore my favorite sweatshirt today to commemorate the show. Can you see it?
Nice. Yeah, I see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's old school.
That's old school.
So that'll probably give you guys a hint of what our deep dive is today. And it is a little, I would say kind of a raggedy comedy from the 80s that we only found on cable back in the day. And it is the 1986 comedy Body Slam, directed by the legendary Hal Needham. And it stars the A-Team's Dirk Benedict alongside the lovely late great Tanya Roberts, and features an all-star cast of who's who in wrestling royalty. We're talking about Rowdy Roddy Piper, the Tatonga Kid, Captain Lou Albano. We even have appearances by Bruno Sammartino and Classy Freddie Blassie, Ric Flair, the Barbarian, and the Wild Samoans. It's like, holy shit. WWE should have promoted this movie, or hell, even produced this movie. It's got everybody in it. So just to kind of run through the story itself real quick, Dirk Benedict plays Harry Smilak, who is a record promoter, artist manager. He used to have a heyday, but he's down on his luck and he's not having the success he once had. His Ferrari gets repossessed, and basically he is down on his luck looking for opportunities. And one day while being in an office meeting, he accidentally walks into a meeting with Piper's character playing a wrestler by the name of Quick Kick Roberts, who's having a dispute with his manager over money. Benedict doesn't know he's a wrestler. He just thinks he's just another artist. So he goes in, he talks on his behalf, and Piper's character loves him so much, he's willing to sign him up as his manager. But when that happens, it happens at the same time as Captain Lou Albano's character, whose name here is Captain Lou Morano, is pissed off with Piper because he kind of screwed him over with their previous arrangement. And Benedict's character kind of steps in and talks some shit. Now he's got beef with the captain and realizes, oh, I just signed myself up into the wrestling business. Long story short, Benedict's character is now managing Piper and Piper's partner, Tatonga Tom, played by Tatonga Kid, and they're making their way through the wrestling scene while at the same time he's promoting this rock band called Kick, and they've been kind of like struggling to get gigs and stuff, and things go awry when they're supposed to perform at this politician's campaign party, and it goes completely out of control with the pyro. Everything goes on fire, things go wrong. Even made worse when Piper and Tatanka Tom lose a really bad match to the captain's tag team. And so now everybody's down on their luck. And then Benedict decides, you know what? If we're banned from LA to actually do wrestling, let's go on the road and let's actually do both the rock and the wrestling. But he does them on two different nights, which is the weird thing, until he goes to one town where they're like, oh, we have you booked for one night and you got to do one or the other. So he says, you know what? Let's do rock and wrestling. And it works. He becomes phenomenon. And now he wants to go after the tag team titles with Piper and Tonga Tom and, have their day in glory. So this movie was cashing in on the craze of the rock and wrestling era. So for anybody who may not know about wrestling all that much, you had the WWF, now WWE, was in their boom moment with Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper having their feuds at the Garden, and WWF going from a Northeast region to national expansion with cable television, and pissing off all the territories in the process, rating their talents, and ushering this new era where the combination of wrestling and MTV created this multi-million-dollar phenomenon that is now known today as rock and wrestling when we look back at the 80s. So no surprise, studios wanted to cash in on this, and the company Helmdale decided they were willing to put up the money for Hal Needham to make this movie with all these wrestling personalities. The reason we didn't get this movie, though, is because apparently they were planning to put this out as a summer release. They thought it was going to be a hit, but there were lawsuits over script changes that Benedict and Hal Needham made on the set, which led to some physical altercations, apparently. And because of this, the movie ended up going, basically, it didn't even get barely released anywhere and went straight to video. And the way that I found out about it was actually through my dad in the 90s when I started to really watch wrestling regularly. And he was telling me, oh, yeah, I just saw this one at HBO, and it looked like it had the Ultimate Warrior in it. And all these people like, okay, I got to check this out. Of course, Warrior wasn't in it, but I saw all these people like, holy shit. It's like everybody with the old LJNs I used to collect. So I got to check this out. And I actually, at the time, really liked it. It hasn't aged great, but the nostalgia is there. So, Mark, tell me about your experience with Body Slam.
Well, my experience was, you know what? It's funny because there's no bigger old school wrestling fan, than me. I'm the first to admit I don't watch much wrestling today. Maybe from the outside looking in, I follow it, but my office is filled with old school wrestling characters, and I'm constantly on the WWE network. I'm constantly watching old Madison Square Garden matches, old Boston Square Garden, the Spectrum. I live by it. I swear by it. I work in my office. I have it on in the background. If my wife's watching TV downstairs and I go up to bed early, I'll, instead of putting the fan on or, the ocean waves, I put on the smooth sounds of Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan. And for some reason, it just relaxes me. And, so, when I was reading up on the movie, there are a lot of things that I actually learned. And I think I probably stumbled on it like you did, on cable. I'm a little bit older than the two of you, so I think I got like maybe 10 years on you. So, when it came out, I was probably out just kind of, being a teenager trying to chase women. But I rewatched it today in my office this morning to prepare, for this show. And oh my God, I was so pleasantly surprised. It was, it was just not only the wrestlers, but people like Charles Nelson Riley,
Yeah.
and and me being a huge Johnny Carson fan, that show kind of mimicked the Carson show. And then the female lead is what, Tanya
Yeah, Tanya Roberts.
Roberts. Well, I remember her from the '80s with, what was it?
Was it
Was that movie?
Beastmaster?
The Beastmaster.
Mhm.
Yeah. So being a teenage boy, like that, that ran all the time on HBO when I was a kid, and just seeing classy Freddie Blassie and Bruno Sammartino and Roddy Piper, who's really only known for They Live, outside of the wrestling ring. And I love Cat. Man, oh my God! Like, I didn't get any work done this morning. That's why I'm jumping onto the podcast late, because I'm shuffling my real job as a detective, because I'm watching a throwback '80s wrestling movie that doesn't even look great on Amazon Prime. Like, the quality is so bad, and the cuts.
Well, I don't think this
Did
ever
you
made
notice that-
DVD.
Huh?
I don't think it ever made DVD.
No.
Only on VHS.
No, I think I rented it for the first time on Betamax before VHS even came out. And the thing I liked about did you pick up something on the end of it? That whole, like, freeze frame, and then the credits roll. You know how it pauses?
Yeah.
At the very end when they win the title. Man, I try to block out the minutia in the nonsense, with wrestling, in the backstories, and the drugs, and the dark side of the ring stuff. Because it bothers me, because I still kind of like to live in that world, of when, wrestling was kayfabe, and I'm 55 in a month, and I still live in that world. Like, what's wrong with me, guys?
No, I mean, the whole movie in itself is full of nostalgia, and that's why I still have a strange soft spot for it. Because, one thing I'll mention, watching it recently, it was different as a kid, because it was like, it was everybody that I remember growing up.
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit sad, because so many of them are gone, and they've been gone early, between Piper and Albano, Freddie Blassie. We lost Bruno a few years ago. Like, Ric Flair is probably one of the only ones still hanging on, and that guy might just die in the ring one day, because he just keeps taking bumps. I watched him on AEW the other night with Sting's last match. He was taking bumps. I mean,
yeah,
it really
believe
is
it or
like
not,
time pass.
The Tonga Kid's still around, and I think After and Sika still might be alive.
I believe so. I know Tatonga Tom, obviously, he's lineage with both Roman Reigns and The Rock. So, yeah, you see him every now and then at the conventions.
I had dinner a few months ago with Hacksaw Jim Dugan. It was a friend of mine is a big collector, and he texted me and said Hacksaw was going to be in town. You want to have dinner? And, Hacksaw was talking a lot about the reality show that he was on with Roddy Piper, where they were
Wrestling Legends,
the Legends House.
Legends House.
Yeah, and and how they grew so close. They weren't that close when they were wrestling together, but they grew close, within that house. And what a great guy, Roddy Piper was. And it hurts to see, because he died too young, and pains me to see people that aren't around anymore, but they gave their life to entertaining us. And they probably knew their life was going to be short because of being on the road and all the bumps they take. And man, oh man, it was such a fun movie. Everything from the, I don't know, the chicks in bikinis to the Lamborghinis to the, I know that rhyme, but the cheesy music,
I like on a Casio keyboard.
No, the music was the one weakness for me. I'm just like, oh no, stop.
Hick is horrible.
It needed Jim Johnston. He would have made that fire.
Right.
So I
Did
actually
you find? Go ahead.
No, I was going to actually pass it to Jeff out, but I was going to tease that I do actually have a
Yeah.
personal Roddy Piper story, which I'll save for the
Yeah.
end. But let's get Jeff's early thoughts on Body
Yeah.
Slam.
Oh, Body Slam. See, I did not see it on cable. It played on Channel 5, Fox 5 in New York City. So, because I remember seeing the box in video store, but they miscalculated in trying to sell the film, because if you look at the original VHS box art, it's guys in the ring and a woman with holding her bra and naked from the back. So there was no way my parents were ever going to let me rent. So I had to wait for television. And now watching it, it's like there's not anything close to anything on that box in this movie. There's the only real offensive thing is more offensive today, where you have Billy Bartley just keep saying the F word.
Oh, but I love Billy Barty. You don't need rock and roll for wrestling. You need balls, big ones.
Was that the one holding the sign in the crowd?
No, he was the midget. Remember, like
was
the one who
beats
up Charles Nelson.
You can't say it that way now, Andre. Come on.
Little person.
A little person, short people. Okay.
But when you say the F word, you mean F-U or F-A?
F-A.
Yeah, that he had it on the sign.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm like, throughout this film, I'm like, whoa, this definitely could not be made or really shown today without a warning.
But not even that. I mean, obviously, the fake Mr. Fuji, who's constantly after the money he's owed. Whoa, you can't do that now.
Yeah, as a kid, I probably thought that was actually Mr. Fuji too, because this movie has so many wrestlers in it.
They probably offered it to him, and he was like, "F you, I'm not doing this."
But I mean, I like it. I know Dirk Benedict is supposed to be modeled on Vince McMahon to a certain extent,
to a degree. He said in an interview that he actually got inspiration from like his own agents, but the McMahon thing was definitely written in mind.
But I mean, it wasn't too much of an acting challenge for him, because this is kind of the same character as Faith to a certain extent, So
funny enough, he worked with Hulk Hogan on the A-Team for 2 episodes.
Oh yeah, that's true. I'm just wondering, I guess Mr. T did not want to be in this one.
They probably couldn't afford him.
Yeah, at the time. Now they'd be like, oh.
Yeah, you know what I read about that, because Hulk was on the A-Team. But did you read, which I didn't know when I was doing my research, that that he didn't realize that wrestling was predetermined when he signed on to do the movie. It says right here that Dirk Benedict as Harry Smilak, he was Needham's first choice for the role, because he worked on the show on the A-Team with Hulk Hogan, but he only found out about the scripted nature of professional wrestling through his work on the film. But go back to the time. This was made in 1986.
Yeah.
Kayfabe was still around. Nobody knew it was predetermined. And what's going through my brain while I'm watching all the wrestling match scenes, I'm like, in all the extras in the crowd, I'm like, did they lead the extras on, or did they just play it off like it was a regular wrestling match that you would go to in the 80s and you just assumed it was real?
Well, that was the funny part, because, the wrestling matches, the way they're filmed, are not great, honestly. But apparently when they shot the final match, they were, the crowd, I guess they were extras. They probably weren't usual wrestling fans, but they were not into it. They thought because of the fake blows and stuff, they were just like panned out. So Piper and the other guys decided, let's start actually like physically get into it. So they started giving each other stiff shots, and then the people were like, holy shit, they started really getting into it. So Piper got them all riled up to believe this was legit. You got to remember, because we didn't have the internet. The internet killed everything with all the toxic fandom out there and people spoiling on the dirt sheets. But back then, I mean, you remember, Mark, when they had the incident on WWE when Captain Lou Albano had turned babyface and they were giving him this award, and Piper, who was a heel with Bob Orton, came in, attacked Lou Albano, attacked Cyndi Lauper's boyfriend, and then he
Yep.
kicked Cyndi Lauper. That made front page news. It was like Piper said Saddam Hussein had nothing on him when that happened.
Oh, there's so many stories from wrestlers that need to be ushered out of the ring back then, because fans, really wanted to kill him or beat him up. They'd hide in an ambulance or, but I was curious. I know it was tied up with lawsuits, but is there ever any word about Vince McMahon? Because they did kind of steal or take the whole rock and wrestling theme, after rock and wrestling, happened. So, like, were there any litigation with Vince McMahon, or did he sign off on this? Or
that's a very good question, because I haven't heard Vince get involved in any way, but I did see on Wrestling with Regret, which I highly recommend if you ever want to see, Brian Zane making fun of all these movies and anything that's wrestle crap. He had footage of Piper and Lou Albano on WWE television actually promoting this movie when it was in production. Now, WWE didn't have a hand on it, but they were still under contract with Vince. So I don't think they would have done it unless Vince signed off on it. And maybe that got him to do No Holds Barred as a result with Hulk Hogan.
Well, maybe that's why the names had to be changed in the film.
Yeah, because that was weird too. When you watch that movie in that context, to see Roddy Piper, who was just turning babyface at the time, but he was still known widely as a bad guy, and they got him in this weird gimmick with the cape and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Lou Albano was a babyface at this point, but I guess people still associated him with the Cyndi Lauper music videos, where he was always, the angry father or the antagonist. So they probably just wanted to continue to play that up, kind of like with the Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling cartoon. As people were switching from face to heel, nobody changed on that cartoon at all.
Oh yeah, it was who was Roddy Piper? Quick Rick Roberts.
Yeah,
my head was having a hard time. At least Captain Lou. They called him Captain Lou. So so that helped a little bit, but it was a joy to watch. I'm so happy that you asked me to come on, and I had to go rewatch this, and I made my son watch They Live a few weeks ago with me, and he thought it was stupid. He's 18. But I don't think he minded the very last scene in the movie, if you remember what that was.
Oh yeah.
It was more catered towards the men, put it that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's funny. But I mean, and I looked it up. It didn't make much money. It was only on it wasn't in very, they only released it in 1987 to 13 movie screens across the country.
This was like a drive-in movie.
Yeah. So in 1987, I was a senior in high school, and I was looking to get laid, I guess. Can you say that on a podcast?
Yeah. Yes.
So wrestling kind of came back to me a little bit later, and that's when I found this movie. I didn't find it back then when it first came out, other than seeing it on a DVD, on a VHS or Betamax shelf. It's like, whoa.
One thing also too, that you talk about the outdated attitudes here. Basically, it's a very misogynistic movie as well, because Tanya Roberts has nothing to do. In fact, one of the things I still struggle with, I mean, she's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Maybe not the greatest actress, because every time she's screaming Harry, it reminds me of View to a Kill. Every time she's like, James, like, that scrappy New York accent of hers, but it's still sexy though. But the thing is like I still never really bought her attraction to Dirk Benedict. I mean, I guess he just has that
True.
charm about himself, but it just seems like because he's such a con man that I just never really understood what made her attracted to him. And then, of course, you have little Kelly Martin playing Roddy Piper's daughter. And of course, she went on to greatness with the Goofy movie. Just gonna say that. And she's the only one out of anybody that disowns this movie because of the fact that it wasn't released. And yet she's the one with nothing to do. And it's almost just there just to make Piper look more sympathetic.
She was also in Life Goes On. Give her some credit.
Yeah, how many people remember Life Goes On? Everybody talks about the Goofy
everybody
movie
remembers
on Twitter.
Porky. Everybody remembers Porky.
Yeah,
you know they're bringing that back, right?
Porky. Everybody remembers her. I looked her up too because she looked. Thank God for IMDb Pro. It's one of the greatest, resources out there for movie nerds or even wrestling nerds. It's certainly a great tool. But yeah, I didn't realize that's who that was. That was kind of what was good about the movie. Like it didn't get the best reviews, but but it was somewhat charming. The relationship between Roddy Piper's character and the daughter. So I mean, I think there was something charming, about it, and that's something that just kept your attention. So I don't think it got trashed a little bit, I think, when it first came out, but a lot of movies do in the 80s. It's weird how 80 movies stand out more than any other movie. You watch a movie, from the 50s or 60s, and they still kind of hold up today, but something about that decade.
Yeah, I mean, this movie definitely has a cult following, specifically among wrestling fans and even guys who, later went on to become greats in the 90s. Tommy Dreamer always talks about it all the time. And, a number of the actors that are still living who've done podcasts have talked about how much fun they had. Even Benedict had fun making this movie. So it wasn't like anybody was doing this was embarrassed other than Kelly Martin. It seemed like it was just a fun couple of months of filming, scrappy fun wrestling and a lot of improv that was involved. And I'm sure there was plenty of drugs and drinking as well, but that's another story for another day. But the fact is that even though it's got its low production values and you can tell it's been done on a budget, it's still, the reason I recommend it is simply for the nostalgia and for the fact that it does have some funny bits in it. And Benedict gives 100%. Piper is charming. Tatonga Kid is very charming, and Lou Albano, I think, is really the star of the whole thing because I mean he can never do wrong.
100%. He's the best.
And Charles Nelson Riley too. Every scene he's in, just that wrestling fans. Here we are today, ring talk. Like he's just awesome, and I miss all those guys, including Billy Barty.
Yes.
What? When you see Charles Nelson Riley, what do you how do you relate him to what?
Weirdly enough, because I was a small child in the 80s, All Dogs Go to Heaven when he voiced Carface.
Really?
Yeah, of all things. But I know he's done much better before that.
Yes, definitely. The weird thing is, I'm older than Andre, but for some odd reason, I know like his wacky persona from all those game shows, but when I think of him, I think of his like turns on the X-Files. That's where I really start thinking of him. That and I would say, that and whenever he would appear on game shows.
Yeah, see, I'm more of the game show guy. He was wasn't he in the Holly? He was on with wait a sec, the Match Game.
Yeah, and
right with JP Morgan. Is that who it was?
I believe so, and because he was like on various ones back in the day. I think that's how he was earning half of his checks, like just appearing as a panelist. And,
or as a regular guest on Johnny. If you watch old Johnny Carson's, he was always a guest on the Johnny Carson show. Him, Buddy Hackett, that whole old crew that was on the show.
and the Cannonball Run movies.
Right, the Cannonball Run movies. Holy crap! There was no one better than Captain
Oh
Lou
yeah.
Albano, and I don't know why his run didn't go longer, like into that whole Hulk Hogan era. Maybe it's because he just was too wrapped up in Hollywood at the time. But
Yeah, because he did a Miami Vice episode, then the Mario Brothers show, and then he did come back for a little time in the '90s.
kidding.
He managed the Head Shrinkers for a bit,
Ah,
but it wasn't for very long. And then, of course, he went into the Hall of Fame years later.
No.
right. Yeah, man, and then you think about Piper, and you're like, well, why did he only really do some cameos? And like, I don't know. I could have seen him as as a mainstream actor. He was that gifted and that talented.
So with Piper, he because he did Hell Comes to Frogtown after this.
Yeah. Yes.
And then he did They Live. And that was in that period where he had retired from the WWF after WrestleMania 3. But apparently, he kind of missed being on the road. And sometimes for a lot of wrestlers, when they're on the road for 300 dates a year, especially at that time, home doesn't always feel like home to them. And then they feel like more comfortable being with the boys back on the road. That's when he came back for a while. Then he left again and tried to pursue acting, did some occasional appearances in WWF. Then he did his WCW run, which, it is what it is, and his occasional appearances. But, as we wrap up, I will share one Roddy Piper story that's a little personal for me, because I never met him, though I had seen him wrestle at the Garden back in 2003 when he made like a minor comeback, and he was not in great shape then. But I have a wrestler friend of mine named Mad Dog Joe Stone, who was in two of my films, one of which was Priceless, my first feature. And I remember I'd only played the movie at one festival, and I remember I was kind of like down on myself because I hadn't really gotten it accepted anywhere else at the time. And I remember with Mad Dog, he used to do a lot of independent dates. And one of the shows he did, Piper was on the show. I don't know if he was wrestling or if he was just making an appearance to do signings. But Mad Dog was telling him about this movie and how it had gotten into a festival. And Piper was like, oh, if it got into a festival, it must be a really good movie. So when he told me that, like, my heart was soaring. And I think that was one of those things that kind of encouraged me to keep going on as a filmmaker, was because of Roddy Piper in that indirect way.
Wow, that's an awesome story. Hey, two of the biggest you guys obviously know this. The two of the best lines to come out of movies, pop culture lines to come out of movies in the 80s were both wrestlers. You mentioned, the two lines, right? Which ones?
Well, obviously, I came here to kick ass and chew bubble gum.
Yes. And then what's the other movie? What other famous wrestler?
I'm just thinking of Dookie from No Holds Barred.
No. Jeff,
I have no idea.
Jesse Ventura.
Oh yeah, ain't got time to bleed.
I ain't got time to bleed. It's the simplest.
I don't know why I didn't even think of the Jesse Ventura.
Yeah.
The simplest line, but like just to this day, people still use that, just shooting the shit, or if you hurt yourself,
Or even like when he has a thing, he's like, they'll make you like a sexual Tyrannosaurus. So, Jeff, do you recommend Body Slam?
I would recommend Body Slam more if you're like into wrestling or old school wrestling, because I think if you're looking at this for like as a movie, like for pure entertainment, you're gonna notice all the like negatives more about it. But I think if you're like into that era, into wrestling, this is like perfect for you. It's like catnip, because it stays thoroughly entertaining throughout. As long as you don't really think about it too much, you'll enjoy the film.
You can't look at it like, it might be hard for you, Andre. You're a film, you make movies, and so do you have to block out like like some of the like quick cuts and the way it's edited and like it, it's not the greatest edit I've ever seen for a film. But do you struggle with that as a filmmaking mind when you're like, oh my god, I would have done that differently.
Oh, all the time. Even when I'm editing, like the movie I'm doing right now, there are things I see where like, oh yeah, I could have actually gotten this angle differently, or
Yeah.
shot this fight scene a little bit with different setups I didn't think about. That's always the case, and especially filming a wrestling movie is very difficult unless it's like the wrestler or the Iron Claw, or it's done more seriously.
Yeah.
Here, it's just obviously everything is played for laughs, and it doesn't have the dramatic stakes of like a Rocky movie, so that's really the only downside of it. Like I said, it's the nostalgia that really sells this thing in the end.
1000%. If you are in your 40s, in your 50s, or maybe even your 60s, and you like old school wrestling, watch Body Slam. You get to see Captain Lou Albano at his best. You get to see Roddy Piper at his best. And, and the cameos at the very end of the movie with the Sheik, with San Martino, with Classy Freddie Blassie, they even kind of get in the mix up, and and they do pan back and forth to him, which was pretty cool. So seeing some of those old faces, it's definitely a treat, and it's one of those movies like maybe I'm 55, I'll probably watch it again when I'm 65 and be like, holy shit. 75 hopefully. But every boy my age wanted Tanya Roberts back at the time. You know what I mean? Come on, she was the Beastmaster.
Yeah.
Well, not the Beastmaster, but she tamed.
Yeah, she definitely tamed.
Yeah.
So, Mark, where could the people find you if they want to follow you on social media?
Oh God, social media. Well, if you want a private eye, where do you find me? You can just Mark Schaupetta, Chauppetta. That's my Facebook page. Just find me there, and friend request me, or just Google my name, Private Eye to the Stars. Um, you know, as you probably see on social media. So my job's fun, and it's 30 plus years, in the making of being a private investigator with a weird passion for for wrestling. There's a guy. Everyone's got a guy, and look, we're good guys when our guy is a toy dealer, not a drug dealer.
Yeah, I know a few.
Yeah, so I got a guy here that he messages me all the time when he has stuff. So, one of the greatest memories of mine, well, one of the biggest. All right, so we all know, and I know you got to wrap the show up, but we all know where we were when certain monumental things happened in life, right? Whether it's the space shuttle crashing, or for the older generation, JFK being shot, or when the Twin Towers came down. We all knew where we were, as do I. But on December 26th, 1983, was probably one of the toughest days of my life, and that's when Bob Backlund lost the title to the Iron Sheik. So, and back then, you only heard about it or read about it. So my buddy, my toy drug dealer, found the original program from Madison Square Garden in like a box of shit that he gets dropped off, donated, and he sold it to me. Now I have it framed in my office. My wife's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Can you find Arnold Skolin's towel?" Because he threw the towel in. I was devastated, absolutely devastated. And Bob Backlund was my hero growing up. I will admit on the air, which I probably shouldn't do, I used my private eye powers recently to pull up some address information on him. and I shot him a message, and I'm hoping he replies back to me. I want to buy him a cup of coffee.
Should be all right. I mean, he's a little loose screws, but I'm sure he'll be fine.
Yeah, he's definitely loose screws. But yeah, man, if you're my age and you like wrestling, and you know, this is porn. Enjoy it.
Really is.
True.
Yeah.
All right. So again, as always, Mark, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. Come back anytime.
Feel free.
100%. All right, I'll hang on to you.
And that's going to do it for us, guys. So, as always, please subscribe. And that's the bottom line because AJ Epic said so.
Thank you.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.